All right, we're back in action. Week 5. The season is rolling on here, and that means at Odd Chopper, at Betting You, there is more to break down, and this is a big boy slate. Buckle up. Marquee matchups across the country. We're going to hit on all of them. We're going to talk about how our Week 4 went. A nice, needed week for me. And we're going to dive into a lot of things we got going on here, including the marketplace, the podcast giveaway, a lot of cool stuff. I'm Ben Rasa. Matt Gajewski joins me. We're both wearing sweatshirts. Birds are flying into the power lines by you. You got your internet back. Life's pretty good around here.
Yeah, I was out for a little bit yesterday. College football's heating up, more importantly.
Yes.
So that's been good. Results have not been good. It was a better week than week 3, but still not good overall.
By default.
It had to be better than week 3. But yeah, still not good with the results. It's been a frustrating season, man. How was yours? It seems like you had a better week 4.
I did. And it shouldn't rely solely on one team. That doesn't make sense. But my year goes as West Virginia seemingly goes. They finally made a gutsy comeback for me, and it turned my whole day around. They were able to miraculously come back against Kansas. Florida got there. Colorado State got there. And then I don't do this a lot, and we'll talk about our discords in a bit. I had a multi-unit play on Tennessee. I really didn't believe in Oklahoma. Tennessee's defense apparently is really good. I'm not saying I thought that, but that solidified it. It was just a good way, nothing spectacular, but got the thing rolling back on track, and we're gonna dial it in here for week 5. So I wanted to just ask you, big picture, I didn't see a ton of marquee things out there in the world. I mean, Michigan, pretty gutsy win, but it wasn't a week full of national title implication type games, in my opinion.
No, there was almost no implications.
Yeah, everyone survived for the most part. Everyone advanced, but let's just get right into it because this is a loaded show right off the bat. If you're still here, and we're 2 minutes in, so if you're not here, what can we do? Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and let's get into it. Virginia Tech and Miami. Let's bring up the odds screen. This is a Friday game. This used to be, not that anyone cares about this, when I was younger, this was the game I looked forward to the most all year long. I love Virginia Tech. Them and Miami used to have absolute battles. I distinctly remember D'Angelo Hall and co going down there and getting the job done. And certainly when they're in Blacksburg, they're almost 20-point underdogs here. It doesn't seem like Virginia Tech's getting the job done. They threw for a safety last week. Yeah, you heard that right. They're a mess right now. Miami's rolling. You think Miami continues to roll?
So first of all, I just haven't bet a lot of games this week after the poor results. Decided to forego a lot of the amazing closing line value we've gotten this year, which is insane. It's been like the best year for closing line value.
Yep.
I've actually bet 100 total games, got positive closing line value in 54. Then a number have remained the same. And of course, some will move against you, but that's been parlayed into horrific results. So just taking a step back, letting lines pass us by, and maybe betting later in the week. It's Miami or pass for me. You mentioned the poor play from Virginia Tech. It's kind of just across the board. They've shown no growth year over year. And the reason everyone liked this team was because they returned a ton of players. Drones has a sub 60% completion percentage. He has more turnover worthy plays than big time throws. He's always live to run the ball on you. But the O-line has some cracks. 32% pressure rate's not great. They're 36th in pass blocking, 72nd in run blocking. They've been able to run the ball against inferior teams. We saw that with Bayshul Tootin. But the real problem has been this defense. 10.8 yards per attempt allowed to Ethan Kaliakmanis is just inexcusable. This team is 97th in total defense, 120th in total run defense, and then 68th in coverage. And I mean, they face some really bad QBs, some that can't throw. Like Diego Pavia is mainly a runner. Stone Earl is Stone Earl. They've played an FCS team, and then they went out and allowed a first down every time Ethan Kaliakmanis dropped back. So this defense has real concerns, and they're mostly healthy. The only guy they're really missing is Jalen Stroman. He's been out since week 1. Their offense is a little more banged up than it has been recently, too. They've had 2 O-linemen out, Chaplin and Ghanem. Ali Jennings, their big receiver, didn't play last week. So just a lot of concerns heading into the game already. Injuries aside, they've just been straight up bad. Miami's been everything but. Their schedule is pretty weak to this point. They played Florida, who's, I think, looking worse and worse week over week. They, beat a corpse of Mississippi State last time out, but this team projects to get back Jalen Rivers and Ruben Bain, two of their studs that haven't played yet this year. The only real concern I have with Miami is they've just been penalized a lot. They were penalized 8 times in the first half against USF. And that was part of the reason the game was semi-close early. The other reason was USF just pulled out all the stops to try to gimmick their way into the game. So it looked really close to begin. But I mean, by the time the gimmicks ran out, Miami just ran it down their throat and blasted them really through the air on the ground. A lot of Martinez production came right at the end zone. But man, I don't think there's any cracks with Miami. If you had to make me pick one, it would be on the O-line. But getting back Rivers will be very helpful for this team. There's no way I can buy drones, even at a 17.5, something like that. It's like Miami or pass. I know VT's taking money, but I cannot do it with VT. Yeah,
that was one of my big misreads before the year. I thought this team was going to really challenge in the ACC, and they're just not that good. That is always the
thing. I understand why
you
thought that. They returned everybody. They just have not grown at all.
You say that all the time, though. You have instilled that into me. I'm a big they return all this production. Well, if the guys don't progress or they weren't good to begin with, how is that really, it's not as helpful as it seems. You could return a bunch of guys if they're not the right fit. It's not going to do anything for you. And clearly it's not, because it honestly leads us into the next game. When Rutgers is throwing on you, you've got serious problems. And Rutgers also plays on Friday. It's a weird game against Washington. There's 2.5s out there. It is juiced, also a -3. Are you a believer in Rutgers, or did you think what we saw last week was more an indication of Virginia Tech's problems?
I am a believer in Rutgers. This is one of the few games I've already taken. I'm on Rutgers' side at a -2.5. I think this will go through 3 sometime before kickoff. Rutgers is a quality team. The real concern I had heading into the year was they decided to play Ethan Kaliak-Manis and not maybe get something better in the transfer portal, but that hasn't mattered. Rutgers, awesome across the board, really everywhere. They essentially returned their entire offensive line. That unit was great last year, and they've shown improvement already. This is an elite offensive line. Playing with Kyle Monangai behind them, they can certainly run. Sam Brown gave them a little juice as a change of pace. This is a fantastic unit. So I don't even think you need to throw with Ethan Kaliak-Manis all that much. It is positive that he's played well when he's been asked to throw. He's basically just delivered it to the wide receivers, who are, first of all, healthier. And then they added Demir Miller, who seems to be at least a competent Big Ten receiver. I'm still a little hesitant as he transfers up from the FCS. I'd like to see a larger sample, but nothing on the offensive line is a glaring concern, and they have a very clear strength. From there, they got back 2 defenders last week, 2 starters, Tyreen Powell and Wesley Bailey, both of those guys playing the front 7. I think it makes sense that they took them on a little slowly. You play Howard and Akron, and it's a very easy schedule. And then you bring them back for VT, and your defense looks awesome, holding drones to 5.1 yards per attempt. Bashal Tutin did have a couple long runs, but getting Powell at linebacker, Bailey back over time, I think should help this team. Now you turn to Washington. This is a team I've not been buying. They have a lot of injuries, a couple on the offensive line. They're also sort of just a revolving door there to begin with. So I'm not sure injuries even matter. They haven't been able to find a starting 5 they're comfortable with. They missed a couple players on defense last week. Durfree's been in a boot on the edge, and Esteen missed in their defensive backfield. It's just not a unit that's played very well so far this year. They lost to Washington State. Their defensive metrics leave a ton to be desired. They're currently 27th in total defense, but their pass rush is bad. And honestly, I'm just not sure who they face that's been really all that competent. You've played Cole Snyder. You've played John Mateer, who's an excellent dual threat, but there's questions with his arm. And then you played Jack Lausch from Northwestern, who literally can't throw the ball. He had 2 yards per pass attempt. So their defensive metrics look good, but I just don't really put a lot of stock in them right now until they start playing better teams. And what they allowed to Mateer, I think, is concerning. I'll play Rutgers, anything inside. Also, Washington has to basically travel across the entire country. Yep. So I'll play Rutgers, anything inside 3.
I'm going to end up joining you here probably. I like this Rutgers team. They know who they are. They're at home. Yeah, they look solid. I've seen them a couple times already, and you mentioned they're letting Kaliak Minus just not lose the game, and that's good enough for me.
Yeah, this O line is like Virginia Tech, for all their weaknesses, they currently have the 20th ranked pass rush. Rutgers just stonewalled them.
Good O line goes a long, long way. All right, those are the Friday games. Now, buckle up. Now we're getting serious. This is super serious. This is Georgia, Alabama. I mean, it could be one of the games of the year, no doubt about it. Both these teams, I mean, we should see them in the future, no doubt. 2-point road favorite in Tuscaloosa. Obviously, these teams come in with no blemishes. I'll throw it out there. I'm not strong, but I lean to the Georgia side, but I could be convinced. What do you see when you break down this game?
Yeah, I'm not going to bet this game more than likely unless I see something live. A week 1 through 4 edition of Matt probably would have played something, but not going to bet it here. Georgia looked concerning against Kentucky. I think the main problem there was just they were penalized 9 times for 85 yards. It killed a bunch of their drives. They outgained Kentucky pretty easily, and they still held Kentucky to 3.9 yards per attempt. They held Cade Klubnik, who's looked like a superhero against terrible teams, to 3.6 yards per play in that offense, 4.9 yards per attempt overall for him. So the defense has been great. It hasn't been healthy for Georgia. They've been missing a lot of guys in their front seven: Michael Williams, Warren Brinson, Jordan Hall. They were all labeled hopeful to play here, and that's important because you're facing the most talented signal caller you face all year by a wide margin in Jalen Milroe, who is like on a Heisman warpath right now if he continues playing at this level, completing 67% of his passes, 11.3 yards per attempt. He only has 1 turnover-worthy play, 8 scores, no interceptions, fantastic mobility. The O-line's getting healthier. They've only played with their full unit for 1 game now. That's because Caden Proctor was out. They eased him into action. Let him out there against Wisconsin, who, for what it's worth, they played kind of well, I guess, in the beginning. It looked like they were going to be able to run, but then Van Dyke goes down, Locke comes in, the offense is a disaster, they get blown out. So it has been nothing but blowouts for Bama so far, but they took care of business and did exactly what they were supposed to. Their big problem, honestly, has been penalties as well. Both of these teams are averaging 8 penalties per game, which would be tied for 106th. I think that's more excusable on Bama because they're playing with a bunch of awful backup offensive linemen for most of the year, and now they're healthier. So that should get better, and Kirby teams generally aren't penalized that much, but I don't know, man. It's really hard. You have elite players at every single position for both of these teams. I think the main concern with Bama is their young secondary. They're playing Xavier Brown, who's been a weak link there, but he's a 5-star freshman. You'd think that would get better. Georgia, I don't really have that many concerns. They did lose Tate Ratledge on the offensive line, but the backup is a former starter. So, I mean, I have no issues there. I don't know, man. It's probably Georgia or pass, but it's straight stay away from me. There's no way
I hear you. It's an amazing game. I don't think it's even close to my favorite to bet. You're talking about fine margins. I do think, I don't know. Honestly, we'll see what Georgia's offense can give them, and certainly I trust what they've got, their defense. I trust everything in this game. Like you said, these are 2 teams that are going to be there at the end. So although it's an incredible game, I just want to ask you a little philosophically. I mean, how big of a deal is a loss here?
Not big.
Yeah, okay. That's what I thought. Just want to make sure. There you have it. That's the new format. That it is what it is. We'll dig back into this game again. It's one of the many reasons. Perfect time to mention. I know you're not dropping as many early in the week, but there's still so much utility in our Discord. Both of ours. I have mine. Matt has his, and it's right here on the Tails Marketplace. If you haven't been over there, if you're not seeing what's going on, you're going to be able to sync right into the app. You're going to be able to sync right into these Discords and see what's got going on. Honestly, worth the price of admission. The links are below. Check it out. Even if you come in for the week, say, you know what, I just want to see this weekend, see what you guys are talking about. We would love to have you. We would absolutely love to have you. So come on in, see what we're about. This is brand new stuff. We just launched this in August, growing quickly. Couldn't be more excited for it. So if you're interested in that type of stuff, we'll see you in there again. Links are below. Let's keep it moving because we got a lot of games, a lot of action on this card. And we go next to Illinois this team, this did not get my week started on a good note because they took down Nebraska, who I did need. Now they get a really tough test against Penn State. Penn State's coming off, obviously, the win of all wins against Kent State, who once again scored no points. This is a lot of points, though. This is upwards of north of 17. Do you think, a simple question, really, do you think Illinois can make it a game?
Yeah, I think they can, largely because pace is really bad. So I'm surprised that the total's at 47.5. Illinois is 113th in pace. Penn State's 91st. Neither of these teams pass a lot. Illinois is currently throwing 36% of the time. And both defenses have been pretty good. I've been impressed with Illinois. I need to at least take some L's, first of all, or at least just make some adjustments to Illinois. Didn't love their offensive line coming into the year because they were relying on two really low-level transfers in Davis and Priestley. Priestley came over from Grambling State. These guys have been good, really good. Illinois currently has the 11th ranked pass blocking and run blocking unit. They've played some pretty good pass rushes. The worst pass rush they've faced has been Kansas, who ranks 61st. Nebraska's a top 20 unit, and Central Michigan, low-key, probably the best unit on their entire defense is their pass rush, and they've stonewalled all of them. So I think that's really important here when you look at Penn State, who's going to play good defense. They're going to be pretty good rushing the passer, I think, long-term. They're currently 10th so far this year. That, I think, is their strength, their defensive line. I don't know if Illinois will be able to stand up the whole game, but I think they can neutralize it enough, which is important because Penn State's weakness is their back end. I call it a weakness. They're 52nd in total coverage. But now you have an offensive line that's reasonable. You're throwing to pretty good receivers. Zachary Franklin's been an upgrade for this offense. Pat Bryant is still there. Altmaier's made a lot of strides, which has been surprising. 10 touchdowns, no picks. I will say underlying is not great. 4 big-time throws, 4 turnover-worthy plays. He's running hotter than the sun on the turnovers not getting converted. But he's still been good. 72.5% completion, 8.2 yards per attempt. I can't really poke any holes with him. On the Penn State side, it looks like Drew Aller has been somewhat fixed by Kotelnicki's offense. It's still a small sample, and really all they've done is beat up on West Virginia, who has a bottom 10 secondary in the country. And for as good as Bowling Green has been, this team is still 124th in total defense. The reason Bowling Green hangs in games is because they have a couple absolute wagons on offense, like Harold Fannin. Their defense is a complete sieve. So I don't know if I'm going to buy Drew Aller and this Penn State offense until they play some better defenses, especially secondaries. And Illinois is certainly going to provide a challenge there. They're 52nd in total defense. They're 45th in coverage. We're going to find out what Aller is here. And Penn State's O-line still has some concerns. I don't think they can just run the ball down your throat this year after they lost Fashanu and 3 starters on their O-line. That is what you would try to do against Illinois, who's 81st in run defense. They lost a lot up front this year. And if Penn State takes that approach, it kind of lends itself to taking points with Illinois to begin with. It's going to be slow and run heavy for them. I think it's just flat out too many points. I don't think Illinois wins, but I'd be looking at unders in Illinois here. I already played this at 17.5.
Yep, those are still out there. There's one rogue 18, like all those numbers. I'm with you. Just too many points for the pace, and there is a chance. I'd say it's a low chance, but I think there is a chance that Illinois is just way better than everybody thinks, and they actually make this a game. But we'll find out. That those things don't need to be mutually exclusive to covering. Another team that I really have no feel on is Louisville. I honestly was a little surprised at the line against Georgia Tech. A lot of respect to the Cardinals, and maybe it's warranted. Now they get Notre Dame. Notre Dame's a 6.5-point favorite at home. What do you make of Louisville? I mean, is this a team we need to take seriously?
These are two teams I want to fade long-term, which is tough. And the Georgia Tech was another absolutely brutal run out for one of these bets that I had. I mean, they fumbled on the 6-yard line. They missed a field goal. They had a field goal blocked for a touchdown. They had a turnover on down in the red zone. I mean, and all it was 1 point away from covering. So just absolute disaster. There's ways Georgia Tech wins this game, but ultimately I think the right team won. I don't think it should have been as wide as it was. Louisville, that was their first real data point because they played a bunch of cupcakes before that. And Jacksonville State doesn't really try to throw the ball. So it was the first time we actually got a real data point. It wasn't great. They allowed nearly a first down every time Haynes King dropped back, 9.8 yards per attempt. They did stop the run pretty well, which is the strength of their defense. They have an awesome defensive line. who's very good at both run defense and just pass rush. They're third in the country currently in run defense efficiency and fourth in pass rush. One good data point, but still, that is something that is going to be a big mismatch against Notre Dame's banged up offensive line that's now lost 3 starters for the year. And it's showing, man. 107th in pass blocking. Somehow they're still 32nd in run blocking, which has been pretty good. But this will be by far their toughest test on the ground. This is a better defensive front seven than what a team like Texas A&M has currently put out on the year so far. And Notre Dame sort of has a fatal flaw. Anthony Knapp has been terrible. He's the worst offensive lineman on the team by far, but they can't take him off the field. I expect some of these Louisville pass rushers to line up right against him and take advantage of that mismatch. And it's not like Riley Leonard has been good. His mobility has helped him escape some of this pressure. But Notre Dame's whole offense has sort of been bailed out by these crazy scrambles that Riley Leonard has been able to achieve. He has 322 yards rushing for 7 yards per carry. Louisville's DC just needs to spy Riley Leonard on every single play because their receiving game has been awful. Their receivers are not very good. You're relying on a player in Bo Collins who tried to play at Clemson, failed, and transferred over here. He's playing every snap for you. I don't know, man. I don't think a lot of points are scored on the Notre Dame side. I'm not sure if Louisville can score, though, either. Notre Dame's defense has been very good. Their biggest weakness is they're 91st against the run, and they lost an absolute stud in Jordan Botelho. He was one of their Viper edge rushers. He was currently the 3rd best defender on the defense, and you could argue he was the best one overall. So I don't know. Louisville probably is able to run the ball. Their O-line has been good, 18th in pass blocking, 52nd in run blocking. They haven't played any good run defenses, so I guess that is a slight concern. But Notre Dame's allowed cracks to a ton of players already on the ground. They allowed a decent amount of production to Miami, Ohio. They had 2 guys above 5 yards per carry. Reggie Love was at 6.1. Ontario Brown for Northern Illinois, 5 yards per carry. This is definitely a better rushing attack than any of those teams. I'm honestly considering Louisville. Go ahead.
What about an under 48? Any interest there?
It's pretty slow. 85th in pace is Notre Dame. Louisville's 133rd. I just don't think that's actually the pace they want to play because we've had a bunch of noisy games for them.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I could be talked into it.
I just think there's a lot of ways that both offenses struggle. I don't think pace is going to be crazy slow, but it's certainly not an asset if you bet the over. It's just even neutral at best. I could see both offenses not equally struggling, but one of them really struggling. I don't know which one. 48, I think it's a little inflated, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree with you. I would take Louisville if it got to 7-2. Notre Dame has been getting pounded in the market.
Yeah. There's 6.5s coming in. No 7s yet, but it's just Tuesday. Keep your eyes peeled for the 7s because that would change the equation. What are we? Ooh, yeah, this is a team talking about not being tested yet, and I'm not sure it'll be here either. We've got Ole Miss on the schedule. They take on Kentucky. They've been killing everybody. Now, Kentucky almost pulled a massive upset. I feel like that's what they do against Georgia. They always seem to play them tight. You're, again, in that same range as Miami, in that same range as Illinois, 17.5-point spread. Can Kentucky slow down Ole Miss? This game is not in Lexington. It's down in Oxford. Big change.
They'll probably try to slow them down. They're 129th in pace. Ole Miss is 8th. Not sure they have any success. For as close as that Kentucky game against Georgia was, the real feather in their cap is that Georgia had a lot of penalties. Kentucky had 3.9 yards per play. They were not really in that game whatsoever. Georgia basically hindered themselves with their 9 penalties. I guess Kentucky could have probably been more aggressive. Everyone's talking about the midfield punt down by 1 that ultimately lost them the game. They did that more than once. That's just the one people remember because it was late in the game. But their coach was a coward the entire time. So I don't know, man. I don't think this offense is any good. Ole Miss, I don't want to read too much into that because they played, Nick Vadiato from Middle Tennessee, Hank Bachmeier from Wake Forest, better than people might think, and J.C. French from Georgia Southern. It's not been a good schedule. But this defense, yeah, and I just ignore the FCS teams. But we can't ignore Furman, you're right.
Come on now.
this defense is very improved compared to last year. We thought that coming into the year. So I don't think it's an egregious overreaction to see Ole Miss and think they're an awesome unit. They are better up front. I think that's important because Brock Vandegrift's not even completing 60% of his passes. He's more turnover-worthy plays and big-time throws. This team wants to run the ball. Unfortunately, they haven't been able to. They have the 122nd ranked pass blocking unit, 71st ranked run blocking unit. They haven't played a lot of great teams either outside of Georgia. I know South Carolina is decent, but you played Ohio with a backup quarterback and Southern Miss. These marks should be better for Kentucky. I think Ole Miss just stifles this offense that doesn't want to play fast anyway. And on the other side, good luck covering Ole Miss, who has a better offensive line than we thought, 3 elite receivers that they improved, a very strong run game that runs like 18 deep. They're not even playing Ulysses Bentley right now because of what they're getting out of Parrish and some of the other backs. On the Kentucky defense, man, they've been okay. They're good in pass rush, but I don't know if they're going to be able to get after the quarterback. Dart's also mobile. Like, good luck, man. I can't bet it. It's too high, but definitely not going to play Kentucky.
Yeah, I hear that. I can't wait to see Ole Miss in real tests. Yeah, they don't miss Judkins, that's for sure. They got an army of guys in that backfield. It's kind of wild.
Kentucky's 74th in run defense. Like, good luck, man.
Yeah, no, it's not gonna. Last question, just philosophically, do you think that Kentucky will speed up when they get down?
I have no idea. Probably not. They play like cowards.
Yeah.
Bush Hamden's their OC. He's a complete coward.
That's a tough game.
The over's taking money somehow.
I know. That's why I was that was where I was going with it, in the sense of, like, obviously, the longer Kentucky hangs in the game, the more the game will drag. But if Ole Miss gets up, 21-3, will Kentucky start upping seconds per play? I kind of think the answer is no, too, though. I think they just kind of are who they are.
It's hard to say. They haven't done it so far. They haven't really been in a lot of those game scripts. Georgia was hyper close, so I'm not sure.
That's what I mean. Yeah. Something to think about, at least. But that's a tough game. This is another tough game, but this is just going to be an ugly game. Minnesota and Michigan. Michigan, they won. That's what you could say about that game. And seemingly they only play at home. That's a good thing for them. Nice scheduling. Minnesota comes in 8.5, 9.5. Everything's inside 10. Obviously, both these teams are not speedballs or anything like that. I don't know what's going on. I've kind of tuned Minnesota out after they blew that game to North Carolina, which looks worse by the day. What do you make of Minnesota? And then what do you make of Orgy and Michigan?
That was when North Carolina was fully healthy. I'm probably going to buy low on them at some point when they start returning guys. Like, they haven't had Rucker really all season. He did play in that first game. Hampton's been banged up. Nesbitt's been banged up. They didn't have McCollum in their last game. Obviously, they're down their quarterback and have been platooning 2 terrible players. So I don't know. I kind of think that win is a little better just based on they faced a full healthy North Carolina. No one else has. But the Iowa game, I mean, Iowa and Michigan are basically running the same offense right now, except Michigan does it better. And the blueprint that, like USC trotted out there, is Minnesota going to be able to improve on that and stop the run? I highly doubt it. Both these teams are very slow. 119th in pace is Minnesota. Michigan's 132nd. But, man, I don't think Michigan has to change a thing, and they should be able to do exactly what Iowa just did. Cade McNamara barely averaged over 3 yards per attempt against this Minnesota secondary, who was down 2 starters, and they tried at first. Didn't work. They almost lost. And then second half, they just ran Caleb Johnson to death. And this Michigan O-line's better than Iowa's. Caleb Johnson, who is elite, still averaged 9.8 yards per carry. Now you're going to face Donovan Edwards and Khalil Mullings. And not to mention, Cade McNamara is no threat to run. Orgy's good at running. If they actually use him as a component of the run game, that's another wrinkle that Minnesota has to defend. I don't know, man. I don't even think they needed to change anything. I think this is a terrible Minnesota team who currently actually ranks, 46th in pass rush, 31st in coverage. Great. Your worst unit, your run defense. Now you're playing Michigan. Good luck. On the other side, Michigan has an elite defense. It's kept them in a ton of games. They were driving a ton of pressure into Miller Moss's face. This Minnesota offensive line is 50th in pass blocking, so they're okay. but this is by far the best unit they faced this year. Again, North Carolina, they're okay, but Rutgers been hurt. Then they played Rhode Island, Brendan Lewis, and that team has no pass rush. Iowa's okay. They're worse on defense this year than in the past, but yeah, man, I'm not betting Browsmer to score on this Michigan defense, but I will bet on Orji, Mullings, and Donovan Edwards to run it down Minnesota's throat, which literally just worked from essentially the same but worse offense in Iowa.
Seriously, though, Michigan, they only play home games? 5 straight home games?
They've done this for years. I think they played like 3 away games last year, not including postseason.
What is this? Like, I like Michigan.
They got a great AD, man. Great AD's taking care of them.
I mean, my God. Like, yeah, sure. Just living the dream. While you got poor UMass is prepping to go to Georgia in a couple of weeks. So UMass did win this week. You see that game?
Yeah, they should have won by more. I actually looked at the box score very closely because of how gross the score seemed.
They were committing. You want penalties. It was insane. Also, again, I've derailed the show, so apologies. Central Connecticut State's quarterback, it was Brady Olson.
Didn't he used to play at UMass?
Yeah. So he knew. He infiltrated. It was a sleeper cell situation. UMass on the board, though. Yeah, I'm with you. Michigan, they've got the blueprint. Stylistically, is a bad situation for Minnesota. Oklahoma State and Kansas State. Talk about a team. I don't like Oklahoma State whatsoever. Kansas State goes to Provo, which we both said you don't want to mess around out there. That's just a weird place to play, and look what happens. Now they get to come home. I'm expecting a much better effort here. So are the books, inside a touchdown. Both these teams, I do think, have some issues. How do you read this game?
I showed value in Oklahoma State on Sunday night. Just wasn't betting anything on Sunday night. It's moved too far in favor of Oklahoma State at this point, in my opinion. I'll maybe consider it more later in the week, but at a +6, I had a lot more interest than like a +4, 4.5. I think they're the better team. Kansas State has been really bad this year. They benched 2 of their offensive linemen last week. Avery Johnson's been awful. He has 5 turnover-worthy plays, only 2 big-time throws. His best skill set's been his legs. The offensive line, again, we mentioned the benchings. They've been a disaster. They're 99th in pass blocking, 63rd in run blocking. Essentially, the whole offense has just been run Dylan Edwards and DJ Giddens because their receivers are also committing almost a 14% drop rate. They're currently at 13.8% of Avery Johnson's passes have been dropped. So the receivers have been bad. I don't know if they're going to be able to overcome this. Oklahoma State's defense has quietly been improving in efficiency metrics. I sort of don't buy it because they've, played an FCS team, Talon Green, who I'm no fan of. They allowed 9.2 yards per attempt to him. Then they played Kirk Francis in the backup Utah quarterback, who played better than he should have, honestly. So I kind of think they're still really bad on defense. So that worries me. Could be a get-right spot for Kansas State in that regard. But, man, their offense has just been so bad, and Avery Johnson's been a negative for them. On the other side, I'm kind of buying low on this Oklahoma State team right now. The benching of Alan Bowman was a bit egregious, in my opinion. He had 2 interceptions, but only 1 turnover-worthy play. One of them literally wasn't his fault. This O-line is still very good, especially pass blocking. They're 8th there, 89th in run blocking, so perhaps that explains some of the Ollie Gordon stuff, even though he exited this game with an injury before coming back. And then the receivers are just too good, man. I don't think Kansas State is going to be able to stand up to these receivers. Their defense is 83rd. They're 60th against the run, 96th in coverage, and 100th in pass rushing. They lost a lot of guys last year on defense, and they've not been able to replace them effectively. It's just a weak Kansas State team that's been significantly overrated. They've had some really bad cracks. Almost 12 yards attempt to Darian Mensah. This past week against Louisiana, Mensah was at like 5 yards per attempt. I don't know. And plus, it should have been closer against BYU. I'll give them that. BYU is probably a team to fade. Kansas State had a fumble 6, 2 interceptions basically in their own red zone, and they allowed a punt return touchdown. So it's not like BYU played well, but man, this Kansas State team, horrifying with the turnovers, and the underlying stuff for Johnson's not been good. A lot of these turnovers have just been flat out deserved. They got a lot to fix. I wish I'd played it earlier, but waited, I don't know, probably being a coward after the results we've had. Not playing it now.
What do you? I mean, again, it's just one game, but like, do you? And you would know better than me. I watched the game, but I don't have the underlying metrics. What did you make of the Arizona game, which is, I think, pretty clearly the best Kansas State has looked?
Northern Arizona gave us the blueprint in week 2. You run bracket coverage on Ted McMillan and the team can't do anything. Also, maybe we should have been looking at Brent Brennan as just a complete moron, because how good has San Jose State been since he left?
Yeah, I know.
He's such a bad coach.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the Navy coach comes in there, changes the scheme, and they look worlds better.
With a worse offense and roster by far.
No argument there.
And Brent Brennan ruins this Arizona team.
Yeah, because I watched that game. You talk about bracket coverage. Fafita, they had no answers.
Fafita stinks, man. Or at least like his coach is not putting him in positions.
I don't.
Well, his underlying stuff was actually really bad last year. He basically had no big time throws. All the offense was doing, and credit to Jed Fish, get the ball into Cowing and Ted McMillan's hands, and you had 2 of them, so it was easier to do. Now, you couldn't just like take away one, but basically it was get the ball in their hands and let them work. Don't ask Fafita to do anything. And that's why changing from Delora to Fafita was such an awesome change, because, you asked Delora to just take care of the ball and he couldn't do it. Fafita was great at not turning it over, but it's not so great when you have no alternatives to Ted McMillan, because Montana, Lamonius Craig, and these dusty receivers that they're trotting out there just aren't it.
They aren't it. This is the weirdest game of the week. So everybody listen up. Oklahoma and Auburn. If I had one big blemish on my betting card, it was Auburn last week. They killed me. They cost me what could have been an absolute tactical nuke week instead of it just being a good week. Oklahoma's got issues. So let's start with Oklahoma. I don't know if there's an injury and I missed it, but it seems like they're making the change from Jackson Arnold, which I was a little surprised about. I don't really know what this team is doing. What do you make of that? And then Auburn, I've never seen a team commit turnovers like this. Every drive ends in a turnover.
Starting with Oklahoma, they are making a change to Michael Hawkins. They now announced that last night. I don't really see this as a positive or a negative. Jackson Arnold's been really bad, but Hawkins is a freshman. He's not working with anything around him. So it's not like, oh, we've just had a quarterback torpedoing on otherwise amazing offense. Like they haven't been good. They're 104th in pass blocking, 121st in run blocking. They basically portaled an entire offensive line this offseason, a new one. A lot of these guys have been hurt. Some of them did try to return for this last game, and it wasn't great. Tennessee's strength on defense is their front seven. They have a lot of questions in coverage, but it didn't matter because they got home so quickly and Arnold was frozen back there. So I don't know. Maybe they'll be better in the future, but I don't think this is a good unit to begin with, and you still have injuries. From there, they have so many receiver injuries now, and I think these guys are going to miss time. Like Farouk has already been out. They lost Nick Anderson, Deion Burks in the game. Angel Anthony has not been able to overcome his ACL. And the reason I don't think these guys are going to play is they took a defensive back last night and moved him to receiver. They do this radio show on Monday nights, and they were talking about, I can't even remember the player's name. It's just escaping me right now. It's how unfamiliar I am with him. He's a defensive back playing receiver. I think that's a bad sign for the availability of your studs. So who are you going out there and throwing the ball to if you're Michael Hawkins? Brennan Thompson legitimately might be your number one. It's just a horrific unit right now. And then your run game is non-existent. And the only guy that was showing you any juice was Taylor Tatum after they just ran Sawchuk and Barnes into the back of the O-line a million times. He got hurt. Now you have to take all of these cast-offs on offense and face an Auburn defense, which is by far their best unit. Not even close. This unit has been awesome all year. They're 26th in total defense. They did lose their nickel in their last game, but the rest of the unit's fully healthy. You'd think they'd be able to overcome one injury. I don't think Oklahoma scores much. And I guess turning to the Auburn side, I dug into the quarterbacks a lot, and I was very surprised by what I saw. I think Hugh Freeze is just tilting his face off because Peyton Thorne is averaging 10 yards per pass attempt. He has 7 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Guess how many turnover-worthy plays he has?
1.
2.
Yeah. I watched those games. There was volleyball situations with those receivers. Your boy, the 5-star, by the way,
Cam Coleman.
through the hands interception that absolutely killed them last week.
So that stuff happens. Peyton Thorne hits the bench. Hank Brown comes in. He has 3 turnover-worthy plays. Unfortunately for him, but this could happen. Like all 3 were turned into interceptions immediately. But the thing is, it's not like Thorne where his receivers were causing the interceptions. Brown was putting the ball in harm's way. It's just every time he did so, the defenders came down with it. A lot of times they don't. But still, putting it in harm's way more than Peyton Thorne. This offense has been pretty damn good outside of these turnovers, some of them very fluky. Their run game has been fantastic. I know they had the crazy fumble at the goal line, which is just another wild thing that happened to them. Their O-line has been fantastic, and they got better. They brought back Miller in their last game, so they can run the ball, they can pass block. Their defense is a strength. Their receivers are pretty good, even if Cam Coleman misses the game. They've gotten pretty good play out of guys from this offense. Like Fairweather's been solid at tight end. I don't really have any concerns with their pass catchers outside of the volleyball setting stuff. With the tweet last night that Venables is moving DBs to receiver, I did play Auburn, played him at 2.5. I don't want to play anything less than that really because I'm nervous Hugh Freeze is going to start Hank Brown again, and I think that would be a major mistake. I would play a 2.5 right now. If Peyton Thorne starts, I would play it through 0.
I don't know, but I don't understand how he could possibly do that. So I don't know if you watched the Arkansas game. They put Thorne in the game.
Like, and he played well.
He played well. He played much better. That was the only chance that they had. It was just a little too late. And then I'm not going to get into that game. There were all sorts of stupid plays. The refs were not good either. There was a lot of just fluky, weird stuff in that game. It has to be Thorne. It just simply has to be.
They crushed Arkansas. Yards per play, 7.1 to 4.
You can't win when you have 5 turnovers.
And the crazy thing is, it was still a game that's happened 2 weeks in a row now where they've had 10 turnovers and their margin of defeat is like 17 points. Their defense has been awesome and kept them in games, but there's only so much you can do when, like one of the Auburn turnovers. I mean, when they're in your own territory, like your defense can be awesome, but if you still hold them, you're giving them a field goal regardless. I mean, at some point, there's only so much you can do.
Maryland and Indiana, changing pace. Indiana, now this team they do some things. I don't like Maryland. You don't seem to like Maryland. You've been advocating to short them. I don't know, man. Am I missing something here? Because it looks like Indiana seems like a pretty good bet.
The only hesitation I really have is Maryland's taking money, and this is by far the most difficult opponent either of these teams have played. UCLA is very bad. Michigan State's also very bad, and good old Maryland allowed 9.6 yards per attempt to Aiden Childs, 5.4 yards per carry to Nate Carter, and 4.6 to K'Ron Lynch-Adams. And Michigan State is 88th in total offense. The other defensive points we have for this Maryland team, they did a good job against Nick Evers for UConn, but the second he got hurt, Joe Fagnano, 9.3 yards per attempt. Darrell Robinson, 4.9 yards per carry in the backfield. They did play reasonably well against Colandrea and Virginia, who was down like 4 offensive linemen in that game. So there's just like hesitation I have even with the good data points for this Maryland team. And the bad data points are horrific because Aiden Childs has been a pumpkin back there outside of the game he played against Maryland. You have to play Indiana now, who is very good in efficiency metrics, albeit untested. I think you could dock them a little bit for level of competition because you have FIU. I think FIU is a little better than perception, but still FIU. It's not a fantastic team. You have FCS, then you have UCLA, who's a disaster, and then you played a third stringer for Charlotte. It's just tough to evaluate them. At least they've taken care of business every single time they've been on the field and they've been challenging teams. Maryland has not done that. So that's the biggest thing I have. Maryland is 82nd in coverage. So Rourke has been solid, nearly 11 yards per attempt, no turnovers, not very many turnover-worthy plays either, just 2, completing over 75% of his passes. The O-line has held up. That was my biggest concern heading into the year. We'll see if that becomes a concern against better teams. Just don't think Maryland has the guys to take advantage of it. And on the other side, I'm not sure I buy Billy Edwards yet. When you're throwing against these horrifying defenses, it's just going to take more than beating up on UConn, Michigan State, and Virginia for me to buy into it. I know he's had a good season, but the whole offense is basically just throw it up to Ty Felton and pray, because their O-line's bad. They're 81st in pass blocking, 124th in run blocking. That's against this schedule. They haven't been able to run the ball with Hemby. They're not getting a ton out of Prather and their other receivers. It's literally just been throw it to Felton and pray, and he's done it. But, I mean, talk about an easy game plan. Figure out how to stop him, and you should be fine. And these are the best corners they've faced on the Indiana side. I'm with you. I want to bet Indiana, but for some reason, Maryland's been taking money. You're probably going to be able to find a 6.5 if you wait.
It's not out there right now, but if it appears, I will be betting it. I will ride with Indiana. I have to, so I have to ask you, did you happen to see Florida International last week?
They played an FCS team, right?
They lost.
I think I broke down that game, actually.
They lost to Monmouth. I don't really understand what I'm the FIU whisperer because I hit them against Central Michigan and they won.
Game. I just forgot. FIU had 8.2 yards per play. Monmouth was at 6.3. Monmouth did throw a pick six and have a turnover on downs, but FIU fumbled on their last two drives, and one was at their own 28-yard line. So, I mean, FIU gave away the game again. Still, you shouldn't be in position to give away the game, but they gave it away.
That's bad. Very bad. Very disturbing. All right, we got a handful of games left. We're going to get to them, but I do want to mention, if you didn't hear on the last episode, we announced the podcast giveaway. What is it? It's very simple. We're going to give away a couple of free month to both me and Matt's Insider Tales package. So what I was talking about at the beginning of the episode, if you want to be eligible to get a month of each of ours, all you have to do, the links in this video, you're going to see podcast links, Spotify, Apple, go to one of them, leave a review, rate us, and in the review, make sure you leave your email, say something nice about the show, and you're going to be eligible. Between now and next episode, we're going to raffle them off. We'll have our man behind the glass, even though he's not actually producing, but Jake Harry. He will raffle some off, pick some winners, and we'll announce them on the show. We'll get in touch with you, and we will get you inside the ropes for free at Tails. So take advantage of that. There's no reason not to. We would love for you guys to be eligible if you've been thinking about it. So wanted to make sure you're aware of the podcast giveaway. Winners will be announced on Thursday's episode. BYU and Baylor. Baylor, nice job. Good defense. BYU, this game just shouldn't exist. I really, really don't like these teams. 3-point spread. It's in Waco. I still don't believe in BYU. Talk about fluky, even though SMU turned out to be just fine. What do you make of just this game? Talk to me here.
They played well on defense against SMU. I think that's looking stronger and stronger. But we already mentioned how they scored all their points against Kansas State. Mostly turnovers, the pick six or the fumble six, excuse me. They had a drive of 25 yards and 26 yards. Both those came off interceptions in Kansas State's own territory. And then they had the punt return touchdown. Kansas State also had a lot of turnovers at the end of the game. I don't think those really matter. They were just down so much they were going for it all the time. Baylor, I'm not buying at all. I think it was a rightful loss against Colorado. They were down yards per play. For the lucky Hail Mary at the end, Colorado also gave up a kick return touchdown. Like, those things come out in the wash. So I do think Baylor should have lost the game. They were getting attacked by Shedeur in this offense through the air. And Colorado can't run the ball, so it's just like inexcusable for Baylor at this point. There's no way they should be in games with Colorado if you're actually a competitive team, which they're not. So now you have to face BYU. Retzlaff is taking care of the ball just fine. He's doing exactly what he needs to do for this offense to succeed. I'm a little worried about his underlying 6 turnover-worthy plays. A lot of those have not resulted in interceptions, but they also don't need him to do anything. Their O-line is quietly very good, 15th in pass blocking, 50th in run blocking. They've been able to run the ball with some success despite having 1,000 injuries at running back. Some of these guys will come back at some point, like Hinckley Rapati comes back, but they've been getting decent play out of their backups, so I'm not really too worried about the run game. And then the receivers are good. Chase Roberts has been an absolute stud for this team. I don't think Baylor really has anything that can defend this. They're 78th in total defense, 54th against the run, 119th in coverage. Like, good luck. Can't rush the passer very well. Retzlaff should have all day, so as long as there's no unforced errors, I think he's just fine. On the other side, I'm very curious who Baylor starts at quarterback because they got pretty good play out of Sawyer Robertson, at least average play. DeQuan Finn has been like a bottom 5 signal caller in the country. All levels of play, doesn't matter. He has been horrifying. Horrifying. There's not even words I can really use to describe what a waste of time it is playing DeQuan Finn. But they might play him. So that's a hesitation I have. If DeQuan Finn trots out and takes the first snap of this game, I am auto betting the mortgage on BYU.
Woo.
If it's Sawyer Robertson, I have more hesitation. But still, this offense is bad. They're 100th in pass blocking, 96th in run blocking. They can't run the ball. They use about 18 running backs. None of them are any good, or at least throw line's not providing them anything. Their receivers are not good either, like Monterey Baldwin. And they run like 7 of them. Basically, they all play 50% of the snaps. None of them do anything that's any good. BYU is 33rd in run defense and 31st in coverage, so they're pretty balanced, which is a surprise. They were replacing a lot, but they've done a good job, and their data points keep getting better. This is not a cupcake schedule. Wyoming is what they are, but I mean, SMU and Kansas State. SMU is a very good team. Kansas State is at the very least above average. So I'm looking at BYU. This was at +3. It came down immediately to +2.5. So I just didn't bet it at that point by the time I got to it. Still might look to them though, man. DeQuan Finn is a big piece for me.
It's bouncing around for what it's worth. There's a 3.5 out there now.
Oh, is that so?
Yeah.
I will see what's available to me.
Yeah.
I would take a 3.5 right now if I find it. I will bet it right this second.
There is a 3.5. It is -118, but I'm looking at that. There's a bunch of 3s at -110. So they're out there. I don't even see a 2.5 at this point. It looks like it moved.
The only hesitation I have is Robertson's been pretty good. And
yeah,
if he starts, that would be a problem. But 3.5 is reasonable.
Maybe it's in the water because watching DeQuan Finn's former school melt against Western Kentucky was another painful piece of this weekend for me. That's
talking about all my losses in games that I had closing value.
I mean, that game, there was a weather delay, and then never mind. Doesn't matter.
Matters to me. I lost a lot of money again.
Yeah, I mean, Toledo and Auburn were the blemishes on what could have been just bananas. TCU and Kansas. Kansas is that team again. I was fortunate.
I bet them live when West Virginia lost 5 starters in the game and they couldn't figure it out.
West Virginia had guys. Obviously, I hope they're okay. West Virginia had a guy collapse on the sidelines. They were losing players all over.
They lost 5 starters.
It was nuts. Green was a little better. He flashed some talent, but it's just been a weird year for them.
Still had 2 turnovers.
I know. Believe me, I saw it. What do you make though of TCU? That's a team that I have not seen. Them and Kansas lock up here. TCU was a squad that I again, just haven't seen much of them. I wasn't a big believer. You know, there's a lot of talk about the SMU game, blah, blah, blah. 2.5, 1.5 right here for Kansas. I'm not sure I can go near this game.
I don't think I will either. TCU is 18th in pace. Kansas is 100th. Both these teams still have decent defensive metrics overall. Kansas is 46th. TCU's 48th. So, I mean, just maybe an under straight up at 59.5 would be worthwhile. You have 2 really turnover-prone quarterbacks. They should seriously consider benching Daniels. Their offense is quietly so good around him. This team is 3rd in the country in run blocking. They're 60th in pass blocking, so serviceable. And that's even though they had to bench one of their guards. I mean, they're still amazing on the offensive line. Neal has been good. All of the receivers have elite efficiency metrics. Literally what this is Jalen Daniels has been horrible making decisions. He's already has 8 turnover-worthy plays. That's double the amount compared to his big-time throws. While being kept clean, while his receivers are creating separation. He's just flat out inaccurate. He can't get the ball to his players, and there's no excuse. I mean, like, turn the offense over to the backup at some point because this just flat out ain't it. And he's been good in the past, so I understand giving him second chances. But, I mean, how many times are we going to do this? They're now 1-3. They should be 3-1. Like, you basically can't win your conference. Well, I mean, some of those are non-con. you're a strong underdog to win your conference. Even then, like that's your only path to like the postseason. If you want to make a playoff, which was their aspiration, like what do you do if you're Kansas? You're screwed.
I have no answers. Like I said, I watched them against UNLV. I watched them against West Virginia. It's kind of a mess. I just don't know if I want to bet TCU. I'm not betting Kansas.
I agree with you.
I am not betting Kansas.
TCU can't run the ball. Their O-line is, when I was looking at this, I thought they would come out better. They're 77th in pass blocking, 76th in run blocking. Cam Cook has been a mess, but I don't think it's all his fault. Again, Kansas' defense has been pretty good, and TCU and Kansas are kind of like carbon copies of each other, 46 and 48, but they don't really have any weaknesses. They're kind of just like in this average range across the board, not good, not bad anywhere. But, I mean, the O-line's a little worse here, I guess. The passing game, I think, is better, though. Hoover's been fine. And then the receivers are pretty good. Like Savion Williams, J.P. Richardson, Betch, McAllister when he plays. They've been solid. The defense has been bad at times. Like that's the only thing that really I have a question with. Their defense looks good in efficiency stuff, but you played Ashton Daniels. He's a disaster. You played an FCS team. You allowed 10.5 yards per attempt to KJ Jefferson. And then SMU barely had to do anything on offense. And you still allowed 7.1 yards per carry to Brashard Smith, 7.2 to LJ Johnson, 6.2 to RJ Harvey the week before, and 5.1 the week before to KJ. So there are cracks. If I'm pointing to a defense I believe in more, it is Kansas. But yeah, man, I'm definitely not betting Jalen Daniels anymore.
That's right.
Half my bankroll on betting this stupid Kansas team.
Yeah, Kansas has been a pain point all year. Let's go to the bounce house. This is a fun game. Colorado comes to town. People are going to be ready. I wanted to bet UCF, but man, this number is already taken. Cross 13.5, north of 2 touchdowns. Maybe an over. What do you make of this game?
It is fast. I mean, you said it. Can you lay over 2 touchdowns with KJ Jefferson?
I mean, I'm no believer in Colorado, but that's a lot of points.
I agree with you. That is my thought exactly, too. I definitely am not betting Colorado. They're outmatched in this game. We talked about it last week. Colorado's fine to bet. Teams that can exploit their fatal flaws, I want no part of. And, man, can UCF get after the passer? That's a big concern I have. There are concerns with UCF secondary a little bit, but this might be like a Tennessee-Oklahoma situation where Nigel Kelly and these pass rushers just get home so fast. And we've seen this be a problem against worse teams than UCF. So I have a lot of hesitation with Shedeur being able to exploit UCF 77th ranked coverage because their O-line is just hemorrhaging pressure sacks again this year. But at the same time, does that like torpedo a total too? Because you have a lot of potential punts, turnovers, whatever it may be. So I don't really want to bet a total. I don't want to bet Shedeur in this offense because they have a lot of disadvantages against this UCF defense. But I don't trust KJ at all. And Colorado's defense is quietly better than a lot of people might think. They added a ton of guys this offseason and really like high quality. Like they took 2 starters from Pitt, a lot of good players in their back, and they're 45th in total defense, 15th against the run. And they haven't played exactly the best run teams, but you still like played Nebraska. The FCS team they played, North Dakota State, they run the ball a lot. Played Baylor, they run the ball a fair amount. It hasn't all been Colorado State air raids. And for them to come out 15th, I think is still enough where I hesitate with even the UCF side. I'm passing right now. It would need to dip below 14 for me to even think about it.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like I said, we'll revisit. Certainly in Discord, I'll be talking about this game as we get closer to Saturday. Last game, and then don't worry, we're going to do best bets. If you have any questions, any requests, at JazzRazBets, at Matt_Gajewski. What do you want to see on the Thursday show? Do you want to see UMass and Miami of Ohio? Damn right you do. Let us know. Make sure you like this video. Hit us in the comments. Hit us on Twitter. We just want the engagement. We want to build up betting you. We're building merchandise. We're going to have shirts. We are working on a logo and a design. We are running it up this year. Wisconsin and USC. Yeah, just the classic matchup here. Why not? All these pseudo Rose Bowls that we're going to have to get used to. 15.5, 50.5 point total. I don't know. I mean, where does USC go from a tough loss? Do you think they bounce back quickly here?
Not really. I mean,
Yeah, I don't really either, to be honest.
what is there showing that Wisconsin can't do exactly what Michigan just did? You know what I mean?
No, I do. I just
Wisconsin arguably is the better offensive line.
This kind of reminds me in some ways of what we talked about with Penn State and Illinois, where I'm just like, I don't think this is going to be a crazy pace game by any stretch, and I think it's going to be a run heavy game.
I think the biggest difference is Wisconsin doesn't boast the elite defense that Michigan does. So I would expect.
How bad is that defense though? Like, are they a sieve?
I don't think they're a sieve. Obviously they gave up a ton of points to Bama. Their strength is their secondary. They still have some weak links there, but Hunter Wohler and some players should be pretty good overall. So I don't like right now they're 93rd in defense. They're 100th against the run. I think that is maybe fair, but I don't think they're as bad on the back end as the numbers indicate. Their weakness is their front seven. However, the weakness of USC is their offensive line. Is they benched 2 of their starters against Michigan. It's a horrible unit. I don't know, man. So I don't know if Wisconsin has the same success on defense as Michigan, which might be important. But I don't know how USC's defense stops Wisconsin. The only thing I think you really have is D'Anton Lynn maybe can come in with a better game plan a second week because Wisconsin should do the exact same thing Michigan did. They're better on the offensive line than what USC's putting on defense. Bear Alexander is flat out been a bust for this team. He was supposed to be the crown jewel. He's getting beat out by like Gavin Meyer and Nate Clifton, 2 transfers that came in this offseason. They just don't have the defensive line to handle power run games. I guess the real question on both sides of the ball is how different is Wisconsin's O-line than Michigan, and how much worse is their defense than Michigan's? Because you're catching 16, man, in a slow game. A lot of points.
In a low total game.
So I don't know. I'm debating betting Wisconsin. I'm not doing it right now. There's no reason to. USC keeps getting money. This was 15 when I went to bed at 16 this morning. If it touches 17, it's going to be an auto click. But yeah, I don't know. You. It's not that I think Wisconsin's even good at anything. I think Braden Locke stinks, but do they even need to throw the ball? Michigan should not have thrown the ball one time last week.
I mean, they learned that early returns on Wisconsin have not been good because they didn't look particularly glamorous in their 2 cupcakes. So maybe Wisconsin's just bad.
I don't think they're good. I mean, I won't push back on that.
No, yeah.
A points thing. Again, I don't even have this on my card right now. It's just like a wait and see if USC keeps taking money.
There's just a wide gap between their opponents are Alabama, Western Michigan, and South Dakota. They have not played any team even remotely of USC's caliber in either direction. So it's like, I don't really know, but that's a lot of points. I'm with you. I'll say this. If it gets to 17, I will bet Wisconsin just on principle. I don't think it's going to get there, but
they're going to run the ball a ton, man. I think they have some success. Again, I think they're definitely inferior than Michigan in both the run game and on defense, the 2 reasons Michigan won that game. But again, you don't need Wisconsin to win. You need them to cover potentially 17.
Woo. All right. We went through a lot. Now, let's get to the best bets. And I want to mention also, we talked about a lot of potential spots. You know, it's a great idea to get $200 to use towards all these bets. The easiest way to do that, Bet365. Link is below. If you're in a state with Bet365, here's what you do. Make sure you're in that state. Sign up. Bet $5. You deposit 10, you bet 5. Win or lose, it doesn't matter. You get $200 in bonus bets. Then use those on whatever you want. Use it on the baseball playoffs, NFL. Make a crazy parlay. It's bonus bets. All you got to do is that. Super easy. You got to be 21 plus 18 in Kentucky. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Awesome way to boost the bankroll. Can't recommend it enough. Now, here we go. I know there's some wait and see on the card, but early returns, favorite spots that you are looking at for this week.
Yeah, I only have 3 bets so far. It's Rutgers, Illinois, and Auburn. So those, I guess, by default have to be my top 3.
Rutgers, Auburn. God, Auburn. I'm putting them on the money line.
Yeah, I know. And Auburn's
Oh,
Auburn's in your best. It's a tough situation.
Toughest of scenes. I hear you. I'm going to put Indiana on there. I'm going to put this with the caveat. Wait and see if you can find 6.5. But that's a go for me. I like Indiana in this spot. I really believe in what they're doing. I'm going to put Michigan on there. I think that Michigan can just really dominate that game up front. And if you get it inside 10, which it's there, I think the Wolverines are going to be ready to go. And I don't think Minnesota can really stop them.
No pushback on either of those. So those are two of the games I'm most likely to take throughout the week.
Here we have it, friends. Again, we're just warming up. There's a lot more games to get to. Thursday, we're back here at Betting You. For me, for Matt, and for all of you guys, hit the like button on your way out. Thanks for supporting the show. Keep it rolling here. Good luck. Talk soon.